SCP-3700, The Tides of War. Foundation Naval Task Force Delta-7 Northern Storm is currently assigned to patrol an area 800 kilometers in diameter encompassing the Orkney, Shetland, and Faroe archipelagos in the North Sea. 2 refurbished battleships purchased from the United States military have been assigned to this task force. 13 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and 15 smaller support craft are to accompany these vessels. Delta-7 has been instructed to patrol a spiral pattern moving outwards from the central predetermined location known as the origin. This pattern is to be maintained until Delta-7 either encounters SCP-3700-1 or reaches the edge of the designated 800-kilometer zone, wherein they will return to the origin and begin the process again. Information regarding SCP-3700's actual depth is to be retraced from all public text and scientific publications. Should SCP-3700-1 be encountered, Delta-7 is to accompany the entity until it encounters SCP-3700-2 or it demanifests. SCP-3700-1 has been implanted with 32 large Donovan Hall projectors, which give the entity the appearance of a pod of humpbacked whales. Delta-7 is to be authorized to dissuade SCP-3700-1 from directly approaching any of the archipelagos, via force if necessary. Inquiry into Delta-7's presence is to be explained by a maritime exercise between international peacekeeping forces. High-ranking elements from British Royal Navy have been informed of Delta-7's presence and purpose. Should SCP-3700-1 encounter SCP-3700-2 at any point, Delta-7 is authorized to engage Protocol Winter Maelstrom. Protocol Winter Maelstrom. Upon encountering SCP-3700-2 in the presence of SCP-3700-1, Delta-7 is to take the following actions. Destroyers are to accompany harpoon-based anchors in SCP-3700-2's stand on its head, deterring it in one location. Destroyers are to move in a circular pattern at a distance of 200 meters and engage the entity with both L cannons and standard armaments, with anchors at full taut so the entity cannot orient properly in any one direction. Cruisers are to draw SCP-3700-2's attention away from both destroyers and battleships, via the use of 3 L cannons and standard armaments. Cruisers should engage in a circular serpentine pattern at 300 meters. Battleships are to employ Class 4 L cannons and systemic continuous barrages at 180 degrees on either side of the entity, 400 meters away. Both vessels should coordinate as to launch each barrage at the same time as their counterparts. All vessels shall follow this protocol until either entity subdues the other. As conventional weaponry and L cannons are only capable of doing limited damage to SCP-3700-2, Delta-7 should not engage it in the absence of the other entity. Should SCP-3700-1 be unable to subdue SCP-3700-2, or should SCP-3700-1 encounter -2 before Delta-7 encounters the entity, Protocol Atonement will be in place. The following procedures are to be enacted upon failure to properly contain SCP-3700-2. Evacuation of naval and civilian craft 800-kilometer area of effect, rerouting of trade and ferry routes to archipelagos for a period of no less than 6 months, continuous aerial and naval reconnaissance of an engagement with SCP-3700-2, increased monitoring of SCP-3456's activity due to SCP-3700-2's re-identification instances and result of the changing hazardous weather patterns. Continued surveillance for the reappearance of SCP-3700-1 and the activation of land-based aquatic defenses. Due to SCP-3700-1's degrading physical condition, inquiries into the potential damage caused by allowing SCP-3700-2 subdue SCP-3700-1 twice every 5 years is ongoing. Cooperative requests to local GOC forces are pending via review of GOC demands. SCP-3700 is a designation for a circular area in the North Sea with a diameter of 800 kilometers encompassing the archipelagos of Faroe, Orkney, and Shetland. SCP-3700 has abnormal depth, with the seafloor located approximately 5 kilometers below the ocean surface, compared to the average of 250-300 meters for the rest of the North Sea. SCP-3700 is subject to a wide and varied array of anomalous occurrences due to ritualistic interaction between new entities, which have been designated SCP-3700-1 and -2. Active effects of SCP-3700 are entirely dependent on which entity successfully subdues the other during each ritual. All rituals, with the exception of 2 consistent dates, take place at random periods of time. SCP-3700-1 and -2 always interact on days corresponding with the spring and fall equinox of each given year. SCP-3700-1 is an arthropod, approximately 6 kilometers in length, green in pigmentation with a mixture of blue, yellow, and pink and red markings etched on top forming a facsimile of a woman's face. It possesses 6 prehensile limbs attached to an elongated crescent-shaped segment of its abdomen and anterior end, with 8 legs attached to a cylindrical segment stretched roughly 4 kilometers in length. The entity possesses 4 compound eyes, orange in pigment, attached to the stalks at the front of the crescent. SCP-3700-1's carapace is heavily damaged, with large amounts of scarring, cracking, and small holes which expose its softer tissues. Other than its size, this entity possesses several anomalous capabilities, a number of which are used to subdue SCP-3700-2. -1 is capable of using its 12-legged appendages in a similar manner to a peacock mantis shrimp. Both the strike and resultant cavitation bubbles produce a force in excess of several tons of dynamite. 2 of SCP-3700-1's eyes are capable of projecting a concentrated blast of gamma radiation. The entity is capable of dispelling and dispersing storms and other aberrant weather phenomena, while simultaneously increasing rates of erosion in any landmass it comes within 100 meters of. Despite its size, SCP-3700 is capable of reaching speeds of up to 100 km per hour in water, and has demonstrated an ability to demanifest entirely if it is unable to locate SCP-3700-2 within a certain time frame. SCP-3700-1 is benign in nature and displays rudimentary signs of sapience. When accompanied by Delta-7, it will either ignore the presence of Foundation vessels or provide some primitive form of aid by propelling disabled craft away from peril. The entity travels the length of the anchor kilometer area in which it manifests in a spiral pattern, moving out of a central location towards the edges. Since its discovery and the subsequent implementation of containment protocols, the entity has slowed considerably its movements, suffered several noticeable decreases in mass, and weakened considerably in its ability to subdue SCP-3700-2. SCP-3700-2 is an anomalous member of the, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Actinopterygi, which closely resembles Eupharynx pelotonoides in appearance with the exception of 13 appendages encircling the middle section of its body. These appendages resemble the tentacles on an octopus, with accompanying suckers and tucked into the entity's torso when not in use. The entity is currently 32 kilometers in length, with the majority of its length being composed to a whip-like tail ending in a sharpened point. The widest point of the entity is approximately 1 kilometer from top to bottom. Each tentacle is estimated to approximately be 60 meters in length, and its mouth is estimated to reach 3 kilometers in depth when opened. SCP-3700-2 is black in pigmentation and it's bioluminescent, with white, purple, and red luminescent lines forming a I don't know what this word is. A facsimile of a man's face on either side of his torso. SCP-3700-2 is capable of invoking rapid changes in meteorological conditions, specifically invoking storm conditions in excess of Category 5 hurricanes. The entity is capable of bending its torso between the tail and semblance to a joint where there is visibly not one, and then spinning the lower portion of its body while its head remains oriented in a single direction, allowing SCP-3700-2 to generate a whirlpool/maelstrom, drawing any vessels within 150 meters towards it, at which point the tentacles will grip and rip said objects apart regardless of composition. The entity is capable of releasing high-energy sound waves and streams of blue fire from its esophagus, allowing it to quickly dispatch close-range targets. SCP-3700-2 manifests at random locations along the counterpart spiral path, with the exception of the aforementioned equinoxes where it appears at the origin. SCP-3700-2 remains submerged unless it is engaged with the other object or organism SCP-3700-1, and will demanifest approximately 15 days after disappearing. The entity is openly hostile towards any and all organisms that approach it. However, SCP-3700-2 reverts to its predatory behavior in all instances other than interactions with SCP-3700-1. The entity cannot be subdued by conventional weaponry and only suffers moderate damage from anomalous weaponry. Thus, only SCP-3700-1 is capable of subduing it. Several of SCP-3700-2's more notable anomalous properties, including its ability to regurgitate SCP-3456 instances, have emerged in the last decade as counterparts grown weaker. The interaction between -1 and -2 consists of prolonged struggle, where each entity will attempt to temporarily kill or subdue the other. Interactions at equinox states occur always at the center of the 800 kilometer zone. Interactions shortly following the given equinoxes are usually short and can occur in random locations, with the victor of the previous interaction quickly dispatching the other entity. Historically, the previously subdued party has been defeated and has defeated its counterpart during the next equinox, prior to implementation of current protocols. It results in 2 6-month cycles where SCP-3700-1 will dominate one cycle, and SCP-3700-2 will dominate the other. Since implementation of current containment protocols, SCP-3700-2 has subdued SCP-3700-1 has subdued -2 for 64 straight equinoxes with Foundation aid. Successful defeat of one entity by the other will cause a number of different geological and meteorological changes within the 800 kilometer zone, described below. When SCP-3700-1 subdues -2, storms and harsh weather are immediately dispelled despite meteorological conditions in areas outside of the 800 kilometer zone. Reproductive rates of local oceanic and island fauna increase by a factor of 3, and crop yields double for the duration of the 6-month period. Careful trawling of the ocean fauna must be undertaken due to unintended creation of dead zones as it arose overpopulation of certain areas of zooplankton. Erosion rates of the archipelago shores are also increased from standard rates to a factor of 5. When SCP-3700-2 subdues -1, meteorological conditions become perilous. Continuous storms ranging in strength of that of Category 1 to Category 5 hurricane occur in the 800 kilometer zone. Temperatures experience rapid fluctuations ranging from well below 0 degrees Celsius to well above 28 degrees Celsius as a result of constantly changing storm fronts. Such conditions may cause damage or complete destruction of buildings, loss of life, resulting in SCP-3456 instances. Travel by sea is rendered difficult, if not impossible, by the terminal storm surges and waves. Supplies, food, and transport must be arranged by air or aboard specialized storm-faring vessels. Ocean food sources are taken from the area to the extreme weather conditions, and lifestyle often inspired from exposure or disease. Crop yields are greatly reduced due to high winds, with oversaturated soil and a lack of sunlight. SCP-3700-2 does not demanifest. It will actively patrol the zone. It is known to approach the archipelagos to explicitly regurgitate SCP-3456, as well as prey upon unsuspecting civilian vessels capable of traversing the harsh conditions it generates. Historical reports indicate that SCP-3700-1 has been regularly encountered by local fishermen since the 1500s. However, based on oral traditions, known folklore around the area, it is likely that -1 was present during the construction of several nearby something, the data expunge, and that its counterpart was one of the many targets of such efforts. Reports of SCP-3700-2 are also consistent with local folklore, however, no clear signs of the entity were noted until the mid-20th century. Incident Log 1, 3700-039. The following incident log contains a composite video and audio recording of transcript of the interaction between SCP-3700-1 and SCP-3700-2, which occurred on March 20th, 2017. Descriptions and events were constructed using mounted CCTV cameras and audio communication lines between task force vessels. It should be noted that the nature of the incident is novel, and the given containment procedures and description have not yet been revised to reflect it due to its distinct lack of certainty regarding its consequences and absence of historical precedent in regard to such an occurrence. Forward. Delta 7 arrived at the Origin at approximately 0 hours on March 20th and began preparations for Protocol Winter Maelstrom. SCPS Mither and SCPS Terran were the retrofit battleships present for the engagement, with the Mither serving as a flagship for the Force. Two of the destroyers suffered minor damage during the engagement, and the destroyer SCPS Stronstate Beast suffered heavy damage, including complete engine failure, and had to be towed from the sea. Several vessels reported loss of personnel, including following the incident, with the majority of losses due to unusually turbulent seas or SCP-3456 instances. Communications throughout the engagement refer to SCP-3700-1 and SCP-3700-2 as Homer and Angie. Begin log. At 17:32:37, an area of water 600 meters from where Delta 7 was anchored began emitting intense rays of light for approximately 3 minutes before SCP-3700-1 appeared. The SCPS Mither made it call to all the other vessels. This is the SCPS Mither to all vessels. Homer has appeared. I repeat, Homer has appeared. Delta 7 withdraws their anchors from the ocean floor and begins steaming towards SCP-3700-1. The entity begins moving slowly in a circular pattern. As Delta 7 gains on it, it catches sight of Delta 7 after approximately 5 minutes, and appears to acknowledge the presence by raising two of its claws in the air, clicking them repeatedly while making a low rumbling noise from the appendages in its mouth. Delta 7 escorts SCP-3700-1 around the origin for approximately 30 minutes, in formation without incident. At approximately 6:02, weather conditions begin changing. Large black wall clouds resembling those found in hurricanes form within several seconds, and the wind visibly increases in speed and the waves become turbulent. SCP-3700-1 raises its claws and moves in a circular motion, creating a small hole in the clouds above it in Delta 7. SCP-3700-1 is noted to cease its activity after approximately 30 seconds, its antenna drooping, visibly taxed by the effort. The hole remains for the duration of the incident. 600 meters in front of Delta 7 and SCP-3700-1, the ocean begins to froth and foam, before -2 emerges from beneath the surface, head pointed vertically upwards. It rises up and the tops of its tentacles are visible, and then stops. Its torso bends and the head becomes horizontally level. The entity's jaw opens, unhinged, revealing several rows of serrated teeth before it emits a roar, followed by a stream of blue fire. SCP-3700-1 dives beneath the surface at this point. Delta 7 scatters outwards from where SCP-3700-1 is submerged. All 13 destroyers reach their positions and fire their harpoons, which embed in the enemy's head. -2 emits a second vocalization and becomes agitated, as its lower body begins to spin, generating a characteristic whirlpool at its base. Cruisers reach their positions and open fire with L cannons and conventional weaponry, drawing SCP-3700-2's attention. Destroyers begin moving at top speed, drawing the harpoon lines taut and driving the entity's head a continuous 360-degree loop. Battleships reach their designated positions and charge their cannons. The first broadside barrage from the battleships collides with SCP-3700-2, causing it to wail. -2 begins emitting grunting vocalizations before regurgitating an SCP-3456 entity in the water below. The instance begins moving around towards the line of destroyers in excess of 50 kilometers per hour despite a lack of required anatomical features. The instance was the gap between it and the SCPS Selkie before the vessel can retarget its weaponry. The Selkie is briefly lifted from the water by the instance and can be seen reaching towards crew members, who are clinging off to the railing and their weapon emplacements. SCP-3700-2 is briefly relieved by this action, allowing it to orient itself and release a stream of blue fire which impacts the SCPS Strontium Beast. An audible crack is heard, and the Selkie is released, and the SCP-3456 entity wails. SCP-3700-1 surfaces and strikes the entity with its club-like appendages once, twice, and 3 times, each resulting in loud cracks. The SCP-3456 instance is torn in half by the third strike, sending its human torso flying through the air before laying just beyond the SCPS Mither. The Selkie returns to full steam, drawing the line taut and pulling SCP-3700-2 out of its orientation. The Strontium Beast has suffered moderate damage due to the fire and is visibly smoking near the engine compartments. SCP-3700-1 is seen lifting several crew members from the Selkie who were displaced into the ocean, and places them safely aboard another destroyer as it passes. The entity curls its tail below it, leaving only its crescent segment visible from the water, above the water, and turns towards SCP-3700-2 SCP-3700-1 moves towards the edge of the whirlpool. Two of its eyes begin to emit luminescence. SCP-3700-2 is beginning to show signs of moderate damage due to the volcanic barrages. Several SCP-3456 instances can be seen in the surrounding waters and are kept at bay by the smaller support craft. SCP-3700-1 emits concentrated blast gamma radiation, carving several large holes in SCP-3700-2. The 3700-2 wails and begins flailing violently. Its motions manage to snap all the destroyer's harpoon lines and create several large waves and push all present vessels backwards. The entity's barbed tail snakes from below SCP-3700-1 and impales it in its midsection and lifts it clear of water. SCP-3700-1 strikes the tail with its 12-like appendages, attempting to free itself several times before all movement stops. SCP-3700-2 flings the entity past Delta-7, where it plunges into the ocean surface and does not re-emerge. All Delta-7 vessels turn and begin moving in the opposite direction of SCP-3700-2. The SCP's Strontium beast has visibly slowed, sputtering smoke before coming to a complete halt. -2 has begun expanding its whirlpool, and the sea has become extremely turbulent. As all foils has ceased, it emits a loud vocalization and turns towards the fleeing vessels before supplying the Strontium beast. The beast is caught in the whirlpool and drifts towards SCP-3700-2. A tentacle rises from beneath the surface and wraps from the damaged vessel. -2 opens its mouth, preparing to consume the destroyer. -1 leaps from beneath the surface as SCP-3700-2's jaws begin to close, manages to strike and sever a tentacle, gripping the Strontium beast, and weakly attempting to strike it, sending the damaged destroyer just beyond the whirlpool's edge. -2 makes another vocalization, jaws clamping down on the top of -1. Several bright flashes of lights are visible, and -2 roars in pain. Thrashing as its lower half stops spinning, its tentacles become up from beneath the waves, and begin tearing at -1's legs from its abdomen. -2's tentacles stop moving in a rapid succession of muffled cracks to be heard. -2's lower jaw is severed, dropping -1 into the water. -2 begins flailing, its movements growing weaker before it releases one final string of fire onto -1 in the water. Delta-7 stops steaming in the other direction and patiently waits for signs of a victor. However, after 5 minutes, neither entity is seen moving. Delta-7 makes its way back towards the side of the glass, where they found neither entity moving or alive. Both entities dissolved shortly after Delta-7 reached their position. A single round object was seen by multiple crew members who were the Strontium beast, sinking to the ocean surface where -1 had been. At this time, it is known that the wall cloud had dispersed into center cumulonimbus clouds, although surface conditions remain turbulent. During the next 5 minutes of recording, gamma radiation levels continue to increase. Ocean surface turbulence visibly worsened, and several smaller vessels are seen tossed by large waves. CCTV cameras on multiple vessels recorded the abrupt cessation of surface turbulence, and the appearance of 4 large yellow orbs 300 meters from Delta-7's location. The orbs linger for approximately 2 minutes, during which time significantly seismic activity is reported within the area, before vanishing. Command notes the presence of objects at this time, but does not inform Delta-7. Following the disappearance of these objects, Delta-7 detects new sonar contact approximately 5 kilometers beneath the task force. Initial readings indicate it was some sort of metallic structure. The last few lines are communications between the SCPS Mither and the main command post. Command authorizes Delta-7 to deploy submersibles for exploration purposes, and to be advised should -2 manifest. Exploration teams are to be considered lost, and the Mither is to return to base. And that's the end of the article. Okay. Sorry for not making any videos since like October. I'll try to start recording stuff more if I have time.